welcome to the second leadership debate of the elections 2017. Tonight we're going to be grilling the candidates for Vice President Welfare, Vice President Activities and the people who want to be your next SU President. So we are live today from Rebel Essex, so you can tweet in your questions at Rebel Essex or you can comment on the live Facebook feed on Facebook. So without further ado, I'm going to go straight to the VP Welfare candidates. So each candidate has been given a minute to introduce themselves and say what they're all about. So I am going to start with Masood Abdul Kadir. I told you I was going to get it wrong. I'm really sorry.
Masood Abdul Kadir.
There we go. Sorry about that. So you have 1 minute. Off you go.
Hi, I'm Masood. And if you're here listening or watching, I hope you find some of what I say useful. And if you're particularly interested in mental health, I hope some of the issues I face right now are in particular, I hope this helps. I study psychology with cognitive neuroscience, which I think has given me an insight into mental welfare and health and what welfare can mean. I aim to promote welfare in community in a way that hasn't really fully been approached yet. My aim is to hopefully bring awareness and actual ways of dealing with depression, anxiety, stress, and why some of us feel that nights out can be problematic or unsafe, and promote awareness of what we put in our body and how it affects us. And lastly, how each and every individual and every student can help save lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Masood. That was excellently timed as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I do have a question. I've gone through your manifesto, and you cover a lot of areas, but you don't really talk about liberation that much. And the two other candidates have talked about liberation quite a lot. So I just wondered, what is it that you would do to support students from liberation groups?
Well, first of all, I would like to say there's a lot of focus on liberation in our generation nowadays, and I think because of that focus, it's quite already in the spotlight. So I think that focusing on it in my manifesto wasn't a key, especially since, as much as it does affect our welfare, I do believe mostly in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and liberation isn't as highly focused in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, even though it does involve relationships and intimate relationships, which liberation can definitely have an impact on.
Okay, then. So I've got some questions, but I'm going to go to Emma on this one. Unless Andy's got questions as well. Your manifesto focuses quite a bit on liberation, on women, LGBT students, disabled, black minority ethnic students. What would you say to Masood that he thinks that liberation doesn't need to be given so much of a platform?
I completely disagree. I believe that liberation should be at the very heart of everything that this Students' Union does. I mean, it's such an important part. Who we are as people is such an important part of welfare. And ensuring that everybody gets an equal and fair voice and is treated in the same way and get the same opportunities, I think it's just one of the most important things that the welfare officer can hold dear to them.
Okay. Yeah?
I'd like to make a comment on that as well. I 100% agree with that, but I think there's just much bigger and much more important issues that we can face as not only just as students, but as a whole society as a whole. Mm-hmm. And hopefully through my manifesto in this debate, I'll highlight those and explain why.
Cool. So do you feel that students from perhaps some liberation groups, maybe some of our LGBT students, women students or disabled students, perhaps do need special campaigns related to the struggles that they face in society and on campus?
Definitely, of course. I mean, I'm part of a lot of liberations as well. I mean, for example, last year I was part of the Gay Pride in London, and I was a volunteer as a steward. So I mean, I do help in my own ways, in that way which I can. But at the same time, I really want to focus on the points that I want to make instead of focusing on liberation right now. That's okay.
Andy?
I know you speak quite a lot about mental health, but do you think that there are any particular mental health schemes that could target these particular groups? Or I know you talk about it quite generally, but is there anything specific in that respect?
Yes, and I mean, I think one of the best things, and I was going to hopefully mention this after the question of how we're going to improve mental health services, and actually have a whole section on it when we get to it. But right now, I just began with my introduction, and I think that's where I'm about to begin.
Okay. I'd like to keep it open then, so any general questions from the other two candidates? Let's create a bit of a debate.
I think obviously you speak quite a lot about mental health, and that is a huge factor.
It's really huge.
Yeah, as well as that, what kind of do you have to go with the community, kind of especially for students living off campus, those kind of things? I mean, I know in Emma's manifesto as well, it speaks quite a lot about housing and also night out and night safety. But it doesn't really mention that in yours. I was wondering if you can enlighten us on that.
Well, definitely on housing, I have an idea where, for example, you see on Freshers page, there's always just clutter, constantly clutter. And I think that definitely having a housing platform on its own, like a Facebook page for housing where people can show what landlords they can rent for, and other organizations can maybe be on that Facebook page and really have a focused part of housing. It's in cooperation with the student list that we have available already. What was the second part of the question, sorry?
Kind of also with nights out safety and things like that.
Well, that's actually quite important with night out safety, because previously we had a lot of focus on the door staff and ensuring that they are enough security and they have lots of training, and we focused, I think, a lot on that, and I think they have been trained very well. However, you can always tweak it a bit here and there, include liberations, tell them about more sensitive issues of our generations. But to again focus on only the staff, I don't think it's right, and I think we have to focus on individuals, and that's why on my manifesto I actually promote first aid for every student. I think that every student, even incoming students in particular, come and learn first aid, because in an emergency situations, it's not just the security that can be there, because what we know about emergency situations, and I have an amazing statistics over here, is that 23%, that's over 116,000 by the way in the UK, out of 500 deaths in the UK, have been considered potentially avoidable through timely and effective healthcare or public health interventions. And that means timely and effective. That means who's the closest to you. And now if you're the closest and you have first aid qualifications, which by the way I just took 2 weeks ago, and I'm so grateful the university has some there, but I want to promote more. If you're the closest, you can be there and you can help aid, because 150,000 people die from heart failure especially, and 30,000 of those are outside of the hospital, which means they're near you, they're near all of us, and we need to basically be ready and prepared, and I think learning first aid is more important right now.
That's excellent, Masood. I'm going to whiz on now to the prepared questions. So there was a question that we gave all of the candidates before today, and that question was, what are you going to do to improve mental health services? And this seems like kind of a big thing for you, Masood. So I'm going to give you a couple.
It's because I've probably come from a psychology background.
Cool. So if I keep it nice and short and sweet, I'm going to give you a minute and a half to tell us what you're going to do about mental health.
Awesome. Well, all mental health services aim for what? They aim for to aid your mental state, which can means all activity and all services that occur will be in a way therapeutic. So you ask yourself, well, if I'm depressed or if I'm stressed or I'm full of anxiety, I need something therapeutic. So aside from physical exercise, which is a mental health service, once you realize that it correlates with depression, anxiety, and stress, which have been proven again and again from studies since 1950s and to now, aside from awareness of what we put in us, make us, which is a mental health service in terms of nutrition and drug provision, aside from current services we already have, like Nightline and counselors that we can talk to anonymously, I would propose something we can all do at our own discretion, because we don't all want to speak out. And that's the thing with mental health. We're afraid to speak out because we can be labeled. And when you're labeled, it's difficult because not so many people want to be labeled. And with the help of Mental Health Society, I plan to not only have support groups, but something we can do at our own homes behind closed doors. Because behind closed doors, nobody knows what's going on apart from you, and you are what's important. One of the most surprising findings, and I know some of you may relate to it, is to write. Exercise writing. The beautiful thing about writing is that we can all do it. It's not aggressive. I'm not talking about keeping a diary, but a journal, and you can look it up yourself. One of my favorite is Maps of Meaning by Dr. Jordan Peterson. He's a professor of the University of Toronto. He's a clinical psychologist who's dealt with an incredible amount of mental health clients. And he promotes this program who, by the way, he's designed it in a way that you write about yourself. So it's like an autobiography. And he's increased student grades across the States and Canada from 20% increase of grades, and he's decreased by 20% the dropout rates. So you don't fall out, you don't feel left out, just by being introspective. And
I'm going to have to stop you there, Masood. Thank you very much.
That's fine.
And I'm going to open up to the candidates then. So you've said a lot about mental health, and it clearly is one of your main points to your manifesto.
Definitely.
So I'll open up to Emma and Andy. Have you got any questions for Masood? Or anything you disagree with? Go for it.
Yeah, I do. I had a concern about what you wrote in your manifesto about mental health.
Such as?
Because you said that exercise.
Yes.
You put that exercise and positivity as this all-encompassing sort of solution to mental health issues. and then completely just disregarded medication as a legitimate form of battling mental health issues. And personally, I think that's quite a dangerous stance to take.
I'll say let Emma finish.
You put that drugs, widely available, cheap drugs, that they shouldn't be an answer to mental health issues. Did you not write that?
Because
in
they're
your
not.
manifesto?
If you do your research and if you do your science, they're not actually a solution. And I can show you how. So here, let me just bring it up. So if you already know that 50% of women and 43% of women, men are taking prescription drugs, and that, by the way, statistic does not include the non-prescription drugs like ibuprofen, Xanax, and other non-inflammatory drugs.
Sue, before we carry on though, sorry to cut you off, you've got a lot of statistics, you seem to come from a very scientific
Yes,
point of view.
because I
but I
think
think what Emma's coming at is, how do you feel that your views are perhaps alienating some of our students who perhaps are on prescription medication?
Of course not, because
mental health
if I
issues
could have
and
continued, I would have loved to have said that some, of course, do, and that's why prescription drugs are given. But what I want to say is that there's a difference between, in my manifesto, I specifically write antibiotics, and that's physical. What she may be referring to is antidepressants.
yeah.
And I mean, of course, I mean, I'm not saying that antidepressants aren't beneficial in some ways, and other ways they're not. And if you do your research, and if you actually, I mean, don't even ask me, by the way. She may be a bit confused, so you may look up for yourself. Look at the difference between antibiotics and antidepressants,
Emma, do you want to
and
come
what
back
they
to
do
that?
for yourself.
I don't think that I was confused between the difference between antibiotics and antidepressants. I think that in your mental health section,
Yeah.
you specifically stated that drugs, overall, the word drugs was the word you used. Was
Drugs is a very vague term, and you can generalize
Yeah,
it to a
but
lot
I
of
mean-
things. Caffeine can be a drug. Caffeine can be a drug. I mean,
Andy, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I'd like to
Sorry,
come in
Emma.
for this. Actually, coincidentally, I work in a pharmacy myself and deal with quite a lot of patients who are on antidepressant medication, and it makes a huge difference for them in their lives.
of course.
But
I'm
what
not saying it doesn't.
What I think Emma is
I'm
saying
not saying it
is-
doesn't, by the
Okay,
way. I want to
let-
explicitly say that
Let
I
An-
know it
yeah,
doesn't.
let Andy
I
finish.
think what Emma was touching on was the fact that you talk a lot about positivity, those kind of things, but I don't think anywhere in your manifesto you talk about supporting those people and helping them get on the right medication that they may need in order to proceed and go forward into that positive mental state.
Sorry, I'm a bit confused. Can you repeat?
So I just think myself and Emma both are a bit confused about how, in a way, you kind of are alienating in your manifesto people who may be on those antidepressant medication who require it in order to kind of get through with that positivity that you kind of want to talk about quite a lot.
Well, I would have to say, if I did seem like I'm alienating anybody, I really am sorry, and I had no intention of alienating anybody. I understand that some medication is, I mean, obviously, of course, it's science, it's made there to help people. But my specific thing was antibiotic, and the main reason I am focusing on antibiotics in, specific antibiotics, and I'm sorry that you guys may have misunderstood me. I really do mean antibiotics, because we are becoming immune to antibiotics, and that's my.
I'm not
that's
sure
my
how
point.
does that fit in with the welfare position, though, antibiotics?
For welfare, it's
Yeah.
both mental and physical. As much as I do put focus on my mental health position, I also understand that welfare encompasses your physical being, and your physical being can become antibiotic resistance. And you can search that on Google, just search antibiotic resistance and see how it's affecting our generation right now.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mr. All right, I'm going to move on to the next candidate, and we'll have time for lots more debate. Cool. Well done. And we will now move on to Andy. So first of all, you have 1 minute to tell us what you're all about. So off you go.
Hi there, my name's Andy Ball, and I'd like to be your next VP for Welfare and Community. For the past 2 years, I've acted as your Essex Blades Welfare Officer, as well as a sports representative on the SU Welfare Committee and President of the Hockey Club. I want to be your Welfare and Community Officer in order to make sure that everyone's voice is heard. I want to make sure that everyone gets the best, feels part of the SU and feels that their membership helps them to celebrate their culture, beliefs, sexuality and identity. The three main things that I want to work on is community, so to make sure to expand the range of activities so that we can celebrate culture as part of an SU. I also want to engage different groups, for instance, mature students, and also my next point is I want to work on safety, so working with the Nights Out team, safety bus and first buses, in order to make sure that people can get home safely and work within the community safely. And then thirdly, I want to work on mental health, which I'll discuss in the next point about Qs. Yeah.
Perfect, and wonderfully timed. That's exactly a minute on my timer. So thank you very much. And a round of applause for Andy. Thank you. And so I've been through your manifesto, and my question to you is: you talk about an alternative freshers.
Yeah.
This sounds really interesting. There's a lot of like non-alcoholic events, a lot of like non-nightclub based events that the student union's done, the university's done. Some of them have been pretty terribly well attended. So what is it that you're proposing that's going to make people like myself, who didn't really go out on Freshers Week, make us come out and do something fun?
Well, I think the kind of huge thing about this kind of alternative freshers fair is to freshers events is kind of like to make sure that everyone feels a part of it. I think especially with postgrad students, mature students as well, their schedules aren't particularly, they work up until 5 at the uni and then they go home, which I think is really alienating them from the SU. And then what I want to do is also help those people that particularly don't enjoy nights out, making sure that they have events in the evenings, potentially working with societies in order to encourage events such as LAN parties, things like that, to really kind of boost kind of attendance at these events. I think especially if we have them all in a central kind of figure alongside the freshers events, which boast like quite huge events. I think if we have them alongside that, it would be really significant, and hopefully we can boost that attendance at those events.
Cool, fantastic, thank you. Right, I'm going to open it up. So please, Emma or Masood, do you have any questions for Andy or anything you disagree with or want to ask him about?
I only have one little issue, to be honest.
Yeah, go for it.
I think, once again, I mean, the thing with the night out safety was it was implemented from last year and the year before that, and it seems to be a reoccurring thing. Even though the statistics show that violent crime has reduced considerably, and that we are more safe and we live in a more safe society than we've ever lived at. The problem right now, it seems to me, by the way, is mental health, and we are in danger to ourselves, and that seems to be the issue.
Well, one of my points is working on mental health, but obviously alongside that, I think safety is still a huge issue with people, especially people who may not be on nights out, but maybe working late at campus, but don't feel safe about going home. There's often muggings that I've heard about, things like that, but I want to make sure that people can get home safely from campus and don't feel endangered.
Follow up with that. I just want to say, how do you actually know that? Because with me, I obviously got the statistics out, and I showed you the numbers, but how do you know?
Can I just ask, were they national statistics?
Yeah, they're from national statistics,
so
and I have a list here for anybody who's curious. I have a list of where I got my statistics from and references, list of all my studies, by the way.
Okay, so where you've gained national statistics, I've spoken to the student body, so people who actually attend the university, people from Hive, from Greenstead, who have regularly told me stories about friends who may have been mugged, or personal accounts where they themselves have suffered from events, especially around the Greenstead area and Hive in particular.
I say this, of course, because I'm a psychologist and we like to focus on strong numbers.
Yeah, I'll move on to the statistics.
It's very anecdotal and it doesn't seem as strong, you know.
Okay, cool. Emma, do you have any questions for Andy?
I was just going to ask, you mentioned in your manifesto obviously about liberations, what specifically you wanted to do to help liberation welfare issues? I
think for a huge thing for me is mental health, particularly around the LGBT community. I really want to help them feel like they can kind of come together in their support sessions. I'm going to speak about it in my mental health section quite a bit, but I think for me it's making sure that mental health, the taboo around mental health is kind of taken away, especially within the liberation groups, and people are able to enjoy themselves, kind of like enjoy being part of that liberation, and it can be celebrated, especially with BAME students. I really want them to feel a part of the community as well, where they may feel out of touch with the SU. I really want them to be able to celebrate their culture in the store, the extra store, Frango's and the SU bar, and I really think that those kind of events will bring them into kind of the community and help them enjoy themselves, enjoy being part of the liberation in that sense.
Cool. And before we move on to your prepared question, Andy, we have had a question come in on Facebook from Sarah, who asks, what does Andy mean on his manifesto when he talks about pills are the cheaper option? That question's from Sarah on Facebook.
No, I think that's Masood.
Probably towards me.
I didn't.
I was joking. I'll ask that to Masood then. Go for it.
Probably is towards me. Well, as you can see, I think that because, for example, the university are trying to stop sports from becoming free, and there's been obviously proof that physical exercise has direct correlation with a reduction in depression and anxiety and stress. And I think those are the three most things that students face. And I think
sorry, Masood, what's this got to do with the question that Sarah asked, what do you mean on your manifesto when you talk about pills as a chief officer? Okay, cool. Because we're really strapped for time because we're live, so please wrap it up.
I'm sorry, I'm about to
Guys, no worries. No. You're passionate, but just keep it, wrap it up.
Yeah, okay, cool. Well, the thing is, if, for example, sport isn't free, it might be more expensive to alleviate your stress, alleviate your depression, or alleviate your anxiety. So you may go for the more easily accessible and cheaper option, which is in pharmaceutical drugs.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I hope that cleared up for Sarah. So I'll move on to your prepared question then, Andy. Please keep the questions coming in. I'm really sorry, they're coming in thick and fast, but please keep the questions coming in, and we'll ask a number of them before we get rid of all of the welfare candidates and bring the next lot in. So your prepared question, Andy, which I'll just remind everyone again, how you can improve mental health services?
Okay, so last year, 78% of students at university in the UK suffered with a mental health issue at some point. I think this is a huge issue, particularly with the taboo that surrounds mental health. And although we've worked really hard this year on removing that taboo, I think it needs to be continued with a support system. So myself this year, I've been working on a mentor scheme within sports clubs. This has been trialled with 4 sports clubs and has really positive results. It kind of works alongside the peer mentors with societies. With departments, and but it really helps with people who live similar lifestyles and integrating into clubs, making sure that clubs aren't alienating certain people from being their members. I also want to work on online, making sure that there's information available, particularly to Essex students for those suffering and also for their friends, so that they can have a support system in place. With this, I want to kind of work on having a welfare flow chart so that people can identify which people to go to in order to get the help that they need. And with this, and I'll also possibly phrase better, I'm not okay button, so one that people can press so that they can get the assistance that they need. And I want to also make this accessible to alumni so that then they can see this and can also come to us for help if they do need it. I also want to work on creating a safe space in the university. So this could be a room simply where people can get away from exam stress or dissertation stress, meet other people in similar positions, and it could also host support sessions so people can meet people in similar positions and get the help they need, really. Particularly want to help the LGBT plus community with this, where people who identify as LGB are 2 to 3 times more likely to suffer from depression than heterosexual people. I want to help expand the support sessions to so that people can meet other people in similar positions and potentially introduce the mentor scheme to this area. I also want to work with people with disabilities so that I have access to sport, kind of through an extension of the Just Play organisation, where we have the This Girl Can campaign. I also want to have one that aims at disabled students so that they feel that they can interact with one another, they can really kind of enjoy sport at Essex as well and feel a part of the community again. I think that's one of the huge things.
I'm going to have to stop you there.
Yeah.
Cool. Fantastic. Are there any questions from the other candidates? We've just had some comments come in on Facebook. We've had some people, so Samuel Bell has said that he knows someone was mugged the other day, so I think making sure people getting home is equally as important as mental health. Another one from Tola La, I'm really sorry if I have mispronounced your name. Safety is equally as important, bringing up national statistics doesn't mean that we shouldn't focus on safety. So I know a lot of things that you were talking about today were about mental health, but it seems safety is the thing that people really want to hear about on your manifesto. So does anyone have any questions sort of relating to that out of debate? Never.
I don't think that I have any
Cool.
questions.
That's brilliant. That's positive. That's a sign of a good thing. That's a good thing. Fantastic. So we are now going to move on to Emma, our final, but certainly not least, candidate for welfare. So Emma, you have 1 minute to present yourself and tell us what you're all about.
Okay, well, I'm Emma. I study politics and I'm running to be your VP Welfare and Community. I've done a lot of things that scare me since I've started at uni, but I think that this might take the cake. I don't really find it easy to speak in front of people or to go up to people on the squares and try and get them to listen to my opinion. But there's one thing that I have always found really easy, and that's caring about my fellow students and working hard to make sure that they get the best possible experience at Essex. So to that end, I'm going to make sure that mental health provision is the focus of the SU at every single level. I'm going to make sure that the health centre has a better appointment system so that everybody can get the appointments that they need. I'm going to focus on international student welfare. I did my year abroad last year in America, and I know how hard it is to move to a completely new country where you don't know anybody. So I'm going to work with the VP International on that. And I'm going to make sure that nights out on campus are safer, make sure that everybody can enjoy their night out without worrying that their drink has been spiked and that they can get home safely at the end of the night. I'm going to work hard to make students' lives better and to make the changes that I believe in, and I'm going to do the things that scare me to make sure that this happens. So thank you very much. Please vote for me and holler for welfare.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. You spoke very, very passionately, and well done.
me.
You know, public speaking is really, really hard. As you know, it never gets easier, and like people, I think even politicians are like scared. So well done. Like I really hate public speaking still. So you talked about the appointment system for the healthcare centre, which I think is something that everyone can say they've had trouble with at some point trying to get an appointment.
Yeah,
it's all a
that's
bit
definitely
confusing.
true.
One of the issues with the health centre on campus is like funding from the NHS. Which there is like a relatively small amount of local influence that you can have. How are you going to work around or perhaps campaign on funding for healthcare, specifically for Essex University?
Okay, I didn't really think about funding necessarily.
Or
I was
how
thinking
would
more
you
logistically.
campaign? Yeah.
So I would campaign by, making sure that every student at Essex has a voice. I mean, if I'm elected to this position, I'll have 14,000 students behind me, making sure that their voices are heard, and I will go to local councils, and I will work with the health centre to make sure that logistically it's the most efficient that it possibly can be.
Cool. Thank you very much, Emma. And then I'll open up to the candidates. So has anyone any questions or anything that they want to say? They disagree with Emma or they agree with Emma? Andy, was that a hand?
I know you say about the healthcare appointment system, but how would you particularly what kind of ideas do you have to make that better in a way?
Cool, Emma.
Well, I think most importantly is that I wouldn't go to them and dictate what I want them to do. I'm not a healthcare professional. I don't work in the health centre. So I think using their expertise is obviously the best way to go with this. But I also think that they're not students, and they don't look at the world the same way that we do. They don't have the same lives that we do. I mean, being a uni student is weird, and so we have weird lives where we get up in the middle of the afternoon and go to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I would work around student lives to make sure that their particular experiences are embodied within the appointment system. So online appointments, I think that would be really helpful for students because, I mean, we're the generation where we're always online. Appointments that you could book ahead of time and also same day, because currently I think the system that we have is that you book for the day after, but you still have to ring up at 9 a.m. on that day. I don't think that works very well for student lifestyles. Also, some early morning appointments and then some afternoon appointments you can ring up at different times of the day. I think that would be really helpful for students. But obviously, my ideas, I want to help the health centre implement them. I don't want to tell them what to do. Obviously, that wouldn't work. But I think I've thought about this realistically.
Thank you very much. Anything else from one of our other candidates, or anything you want to say back to that, Andy? No?
Maybe I'd like to ask you, Emma, what do you think about students who suffer from depression, anxiety, and stress, and how can you help those students?
Okay, well, I mean, later on I'm going to be answering that particular question because it's been put to us by the SU, but I mean, the health centre appointment system, I think, doesn't work for students who have depression. It's very hard to get out of bed in the morning and ring up a stranger on the phone and talk to them about an appointment when you can barely get out of bed and go to your lectures or anything. So
on that note, I'm going to go straight to the mental health question there, make it a bit easier. So the pre-prepared question, and you have 2 minutes to answer. How are you going to improve mental health services then, Emma?
Okay,
you just carry on from where you were,
yeah.
really, to be honest. You
I
go for it.
Loads of ideas about how to improve mental health provision on this campus. I think that we should start with a baseline of making sure that every student is empowered and confident enough to look after their own mental health. So exercise classes to boost endorphins and well-being workshops, life skills workshops. I want to implement a peer mentoring scheme so that everybody can help each other. and so that you can just go to someone casually. You don't have to make an appointment. You don't have to go through a pre-existing system. I think that there should be more signposting towards the services that we do have, such as student support. I would work on our appointment system with the health centre, as I previously said, and finally I would lobby the university to make sure that there are no cuts to services that help students' mental health, no cuts to students, no cuts to services that help students with addiction, alcohol issues. Essentially, my manifesto is all about empowering students to make better choices and to get the help that they need. And I think that personally that's something that I would have liked during my time at university, and I'll fight for it as hard as I possibly can to make sure that it is for everybody else.
Thank you very much, Emma. And was your question answered there, Masood, in Emma's statement?
In part, I'd say yes.
Okay, cool. Any other questions from anyone on Emma's? Because I've got some questions that have just come in. And this is kind of for all of you, actually. So there's already quite a complex system of student supports run by the university. There's Nightline, that kind of thing. How are you going to improve welfare services? How are you going to add value to all of that? And I'll start with Emma, because this is your go.
Okay. So how do you mean?
So there's already a lot of welfare services that university already runs.
Right.
So how are you going to make it any better, and what sort of impact is the position of VP Welfare on the system that we already have?
So I would make sure that signposting services are available so that everybody knows exactly what each segment is for, because there's a lot of different things that have a lot of different purposes, and people don't always know how to navigate that. So I think that it's important that we make sure that everybody knows what each segment of mental health provision on this campus is for, how to use it, and who will help them to get to that point.
Fantastic. And I've got another question as well. I can't remember who it came from. I apologise.
So could we not answer that question or not?
I say we're running out of time, but we are still in Emma's slot, actually. So if we've given equal time to each of them. So actually, no, that's my fault. We're going to stick on Emma's slot. So another question. There's another question that's come about the safety bus at night time. I believe that was on your manifesto. How are we going to make the safety bus run during the day?
During the day?
Yeah.
Okay. I hadn't thought about it during the day because, I mean, obviously it feels like it's more of an issue at night, and everybody feels more concerned about walking home at night. But during the day is an excellent point, and I think we'd need to discuss more funding from the SU. Maybe during the day it might need to cost a little more, but I think that it's something that we could definitely look into as a student union. I think the problem would probably be mostly from staffing it. So that is something that I will definitely keep in mind. The safety bus is just an amazing resource, and we should be always trying to improve it.
Cool. Thank you very much, and thank you very much to all the welfare candidates. Can everyone give them a big round of applause? It's not easy standing up here, so... Okey-dokey. Fantastic. So we will be taking a short break of 10 minutes. So please stay tuned in, go grab yourself a cup of tea, and we'll be back in a moment. Cool. Thank you.